Hi there, this is the Mill, which stands for Make, Innovate, and Learn Lab. It's a place where we have different makerspace machines and resources available for you to use as you work to further educate your students. So what we have right here is a laser cutter. It's a subtractive tool head, which means that it uses a laser to cut out material instead of adding material, like you'll see in the 3D printers later on. It has two modes, the first of which is called a vector, which cuts material out and leaves sort of a skeleton behind. Here are some examples of a vector. You can see there's lots of empty space. It's almost like a stencil cutter, kind of an aesthetic. Here are some other different examples of what it is to vector a project. I think they're pretty cool. And then the other mode is rastering, which is engraving a design onto something without actually leaving any empty space. So this is a really, really beautiful design that someone in a class made, actually, of a medieval stained glass type window that's been rastered onto here. You can see the different engraving levels. You can see these two animals too with the geometric shapes that they've been rastered on. So you have two options available to you, or you can do a mixture, obviously. As you can kind of see on this one, you have the silhouette vectored and you have the design, which is geometric, that's been rastered onto it. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with this laser cutter. You can also do three-dimensional models with a laser cutter. So something like this, for example, where you cut out the different shapes and then you slide them together, and you can hold them together with glue, or they can just stay together. And you can create three-dimensional shapes like this, like dinosaurs. There are just a lot of possibilities. Okay, so these are the 3D printers. They have additive tool heads, which means that they add material to a model to build it kind of from the ground up. So this is called the filament, and we thread it in through this Bowden tube into the extruding head of the machine. And the Bowden tube heats up and it melts the plastic, it's a special kind of plastic, into these really thin lines to build the model up from the beginning. We use a slicing software called Cura so that you can import your designs into Cura and then load it onto an SD card that the 3D printers will then read, and then they'll use that to build your model. The most obvious use for a 3D printer is prototyping. So if you're doing an engineering class or you're working with students using math or architecture, obviously you can design a model and then see the finished result at the end once you've printed it out. But there are also a lot of other subjects that you can teach using a 3D printer too. So there are things like math, so you can use manipulatives like to teach geometry and other things like that. Biology, we actually downloaded this model of an anatomically realistic crab from the Museum of Natural History, and we're able to print it out so that you can see a very realistic representation of a crustacean. And then history even. So this, for example, is a 12th century castle, which we can't actually see today because there have been so many additions in the last few hundred years. But if we go back and we print this kind of a model out on a 3D printer, we're able to see and like hold with our hands a little piece of what this would have looked like in the 12th century. So those are just a few things that you can do. This is the Lulzbot Taz. It's capable of building a much bigger model, but it's a little more complicated and less user-friendly. These are the Ultimakers, and I think they're really cute. They're a little more automatic, so if you have it more simple, a smaller model, this would probably be your best bet. There's a more user-friendly interface with these.